What's going on, golf fans? It's your boy Gsluke here with our round 2 live stream for the Baycurrent Classic. Going to get you guys ready for all of your exposure. But first off, a look at the weather report, what we're expecting for Friday. We'll also go through some strategy for DFS, ownership towards the top end of the board. This slate, the shots gained metrics are really wonky, so we're going to talk about how to handle that. And then towards the second half of the stream, we're going to focus on the underdog and the prize pick side and some value on these round 2 boards, which compared to round 1, I am much more confident about what we have for today. But yesterday did cash out on the slip that we entered. I mentioned the possibility for delay. It did end up coming through and play did not get stopped. So that was great. We did cash out on that slip that we entered without all of that craziness behind it. Super stoked for the next few days. So any sort of questions that you've got for today's action, feel free to go ahead and let me know, but it's for DFS or on the prop side a little bit later on. And if you're just tuning in to take in the information and get ready for today, feel free to say hi as well. We got Rushing Yard down there who says, let's get the spread. Amen to that, and let's get after it for this Friday and get this weekend started off the right way. But first off, I want to show the scoring average from today, which with all those wins played about +1 over par. But with 30 to 40 mile an hour wind gusts, this could have played a whole lot harder. So when we get to the prop section a whole lot later on, I think the golf course is going to play super easy today. But for the weather standpoint, it looks extremely flat for Friday. I'm talking about 5, maybe 6 miles an hour wind the entire day. But between the highest and the lowest wind gusts that we're expecting, it's a 1 to a 2 mile an hour difference. So whether you're the first guy off, whether you're the last guy off and the tee times for round number 2, I don't think it's going to make a massive difference. You could argue that the first tee time might have slightly more receptive conditions than what you have at the very last tee time. But even then, because it's threesomes off of both sides and there's only 78 players, it's a minute change at the very most, maybe like a 0.1 shot difference from the very first to the very last tee time. But in 99% of cases, it's really not going to make a difference with your exposure. But the big difference from the prop perspective, of course, is that it looks ideal. You're talking about moderate temperatures, not too hot, not too cold. Ball is going to be traveling its normal distance. Wind also is a complete non-factor, which was a complete 180 compared to the literal typhoon conditions that they were playing in for round number 1, which is why I'm so bullish for that angle for today. So that's what we're going to touch on a little bit later on. But before we do so, let's talk about this DFS slate, which I think is extremely intriguing, and I'm super stoked to get after it because we've got a different kind of approach for it. And the reason for that is that the shots gained metrics are absolutely trash. If you were following players last night, you probably noticed what I did in that the shot tracker was completely inaccurate. You had guys that were putting for par from 15 to 25 feet on every single hole, and they obviously weren't making every single 25 footer. And maybe the most glaring example of that was Garrett Higo, who was one of the players that we faded. He finished his round at -2. At least that was what they said, would have screwed us, would have went under that projection. I was heated for a couple seconds, and then a minute later, it changed to an even par scorecard. So even then, we have no idea where these players truly are during their rounds. And every single hole, I think it was the last 9 holes that Garrett Higo played, they claimed that he made a 20-footer for par. And obviously, that was not the case. And that wasn't just Garrett Higo. There were a lot of other players in the field where every hole, if they weren't making a birdie, it was like a 25-footer bomb for a par. It's just completely throwing off the shots gained metrics. I'm sure the green averages are completely off. The fairway averages were completely off as well. And they would show a shot tracer for a player off the tee that's like 350 straight down the middle, and then it would get corrected to in the trees like 250 yards towards the right. So the shots gained metrics, the different databases that are calculating these stats are completely backwards on a week like this. It's just not going to be accurate. So as a result of that, I am not using it whatsoever in my DFS process. I've eliminated the shots gained metrics. I do not care how they played in round number 1. And I'm more so using some long-term metrics to find my plays. And we're about to go through the ownership. That, of course, is another thing that really matters on a slate like this. But you'll see my player pool tags for round number 2 are extremely light. It's the high upside plays, which were there before, looking for guys that are high birdie or better percentage golfers, because that is directly correlated to your DraftKings scoring. But then, because we can't look at course history, right? This is the first time we're playing at this course. I'm using my course fits, which if you're a part of my Patreon page, if you've watched my content for a long time, you guys will know that my rankings, my modeling for a week is split up between recent form and how they fit at that specific course. I'm using this Yokohama Country Club course fit tab, and my top 5, my top 10 players in that category, if they weren't already in my player pool because they were a high upside player, they were getting added because of that course fit angle. And I do have a smaller player pool as a result of this. When I have 4 to 5 different reasons for getting to plays, it's easier to get to 25 to 30 players that you're using. But when you only have 2 player pool tags that you're willing to use, it makes it a lot tougher to build a large player pool. So my personal exposure is a little bit more condensed for round number 2. It's going to be lower dollar as a result as well. But I like the kind of edge that I have on what I'm doing here, because rather than chasing my tail with these shots gained metrics that are completely inaccurate, I'm focusing on what we can control, a player's long-term upside, a player's long-term course fit at this kind of venue, which doesn't necessarily correlate to how they played in round 1 in either case, right? High upside guys, it's for the year. The course history was obviously, the course fit, I should say, was what they had coming into this week, which means if they played terribly in round number 1, this is going to give me an opportunity to get to a ton of leverage plays. So I don't think there's any correct answer. When we get a slate like this, you have to try and adapt to the information that we have at hand. But if you're using the shots gained metrics, we are going to show you some of the poppers in either direction. If you gained 5 strokes approach, then that probably matters. That means you probably at least gained a little bit to the field, but the extent of how much you gained is seriously in question with the kind of shot trackers that we were seeing. And it's the same thing. Like if you were, losing a whole bunch of strokes putting, that could have been because it was saying that you were 3 putting or 4 putting greens where you were, not even on the green by the time you got the shot 3 or 4. So it's just ridiculous what they have with some of the stat keeping on here. And it's definitely something to keep in mind for the slate. Let's go through these ownership projections. And by the way, this projection sheet that we're going through right now can be found on my Patreon page. Over there is where you can get my entire player pool, obviously all the ownership projections. But what we're going to focus on here will be the top 15 in the projected ownership. So you got Xander Schauffele at the top at 26%, Alex Noren at 22.5%. He's the real bump because of his -2 score. Same thing with a Kurt Kitayama. I've got him over 20%. But a lot of your studs are still holding that ownership, and that's because people like spending all their salary. So your Xanders, even your Morikawas after a very average round, are still getting a healthy amount from the rest of the field. But what you start to see happening for round 2, round 3, and then especially in round 4 are that the players in the 6 and 7K range that are playing well start to get some steam. So for example, a Nikolai Højgaard, who is way too cheap at $7,700, he's nearly 14% owned. He's one of the chalkier guys that we have in that 7K range. Rico Hoey, he had a -3 round towards the top end of the leaderboard. At $7,800, he's at about 13% projected ownership. And this is for the large field GPPs. If you're in a cash or a single entry contest, guys like a Højgaard or a Hoey, I would expect to be over that 20% mark. So you've got to keep that in mind when you're looking at these ownership projections as well, as they reflect the large field GPP contests, which can be a little bit different ownership dynamic wise than what we have in single entries or cash. The general rule of thumb to work with on that, by the way, is that in single entries and cash, people play more scared. They don't take as many risks in those kind of formats. And your chalk gets chalkier and your pivots become even more so of pivots in those kind of builds. But, the general trend outside of that is that it's mostly 8, 9K guys that we see in this top 15 of those ownership rankings, but a slight bias towards the players that have started to play well. And just like we had for main slate, if you're going to play some chalk, I'm okay doing it in the 9, 10K range. Your studs, the guys deserve to be getting that kind of attention. But when it gets down to the 6K range in particular, but even some 7K options, I think twice before playing somebody at that 15% plus ownership mark. So it's becomes a real big problem when we get to round 4 showdown, when we have the placement points and people are really, really leaning into that aspect of golf. But that's what we've got for the ownership at the top end of the board. And like I said, guys, you can find the entire spreadsheet on my Patreon page already posted over there for my members. Has the player pool tags on it. And just to remind you, if you're just joining us, a little bit different because of that shots gained situation. More so looking at some of this longer term stuff because the shots gained metrics don't make much sense. But I am going to go through them just real quickly. Again, the guys that were extreme gainers in any one category probably still at least gained in that category, but the rest of it, who the heck knows? Let's see. We got a few other chatters down there as well. Let's see what's going on. What's going on, Buh? We got Carolina down there. He says, stay hot on the props, Luke. Absolutely. It was a little bit of a rut last week. Not one of my better ones, but glad that we started this one off hot. And yeah, let's see what we can do damage-wise here in round number 2. But let's go through these shots gained metrics before we get to the prop side. Again, any questions or deep dives, feel free to let me know. But the shots gained metrics really don't mean that much. So I don't know if deep dives are going to be that prevalent here. But let's look at the ball striking stats. So your best ball strikers, and we're going to put that in quotes for round number 1, were a Kevin Yu, a Michael Kim, a Collie, a Hoey, and an Adam Scott. Now, it says that these guys gained 5 strokes off the tee. Like a Michael Kim, let's put this in perspective. He's not a long player off the tee. So him gaining 5 strokes off the tee it is utter horseshit. That obviously did not happen, right? So like, this is what I mean. In effect, we're not even going to look at these shots gained metrics. I mean, that's just like the biggest horseshit I've ever seen in my life. Let's look at the putting stats. Takumi Kanaya gained 6.7 strokes putting. That's doubtful. Alex Smalley gained 5 strokes putting. That's doubtful. Let's look at the around the green. Camilo gained 3.6. Like, we never see these over 3 strokes gained ever when we go to the around the green stats. Like, once in a blue moon, right? Someone gains like 2.5 or 3 strokes around the green. We've got 4 players that gained over 4 strokes or over 2 strokes around the green in just round number 1. Yeah, these shots gained metrics are baloney. I mean, when I was going through the shot tracking last night, I mean, it told me really everything I had to know. And I don't even think it's worth spending any time on. I think if you're using these shots gained metrics, you're doing it the wrong way. And if you didn't catch the round 1 shot tracker and you don't really understand what I'm talking about, just track it tonight, right? I know it starts at 7:45, so most of us will be up and able to track that at some stage. Even if you're at work, just, you know, pop up the shot tracker on the side and watch it for just a minute or so. Every single shot is being pinged around the place. You never really know where the accurate shot's going to be. And then sometimes the entire hole just loads for a player all at one time. And you don't even get the shot tracker for that player. There were numerous times where even after the fact, when the round ended and they supposedly had all the data in there, players don't even have shot trails for that specific hole. So that's why I don't understand how these shots gained metrics are even being put together. Like, how does it work on those holes? Is that how Michael Kim gained 5 strokes off the tee? Is that because all of the shots gained on those holes where they weren't counting the strokes in between were all counting for off the tee? Like, that would make sense to me, right? If they were just counting everything in one shot, then that would probably go to that category. Those are the kind of issues that I have with it. So personally staying away from it, looking at that longer term stuff. And I want to bring up the top birdie makers because that is really the main thing that we can lean into here. My modeling is posted on my Patreon page. So if you want to see the best course history players, that is where you can find that. Unfortunately, I am going to keep that one behind the paywall, as that is proprietary and probably the #1 model that I use on a week in, week out basis, slate in, slate out basis. As you can tell, I use it for Showdown as well. But this is the birdie or better list. And the reason why birdie or better percentage matters is it is directly correlated to your DraftKings score. And a lot of these elite tier players aren't playing this week, but a Kurt Kitayama is. He's in my player pool, Michael Thorbjornsen. And I hate to just like give away, you know, probably half my player pool here, but literally the top 40 birdie makers, or even the top 50 birdie makers, I think, that are all playing in this field, I'm playing every single one of them. So we're not going to go through the entire list. I just showed you how to find it. PGAtour.com stats. You click scoring, and then you click birdie or better percentage. If you want to see some of the top aggressive players, the guys that make a whole lot of birdies compared to their peers, that is exactly how you go out there and do so. So check that out if you guys haven't already. And now let's tune into the prop side of things. What's going on, Antonio? You said you saw me live and you were surprised. Yeah, it's in Japan. It's the middle of the day, so it's definitely a different routine than usual. He said, did anyone watch any of this? You were doing something, you didn't try and find it. I did. I watched everything that was on the actual broadcast, but tracking hole by hole with Shot Tracker, that's what I was doing for the first 3 or 4 hours. Was useless. I mean, I gave up on it at a certain stage. So yeah, if you can stay up, I think the broadcast window isn't till 11 p.m. tonight. So it's pretty late, even for us East Coasters. They will have that on. It gives you a much better idea of how the golf course is playing, how these actual players are hitting the ball. These metrics, though, are all over the place. You said the shot link for these Japan tournaments are trash. Yeah, I think it's the ones where they have the trackers on the players and they're supposed to click when they're at their ball. It's the same one that they used for the Mexico Open, for example, where they don't have the actual lasers on the golf course. It's clearly not working, or the players don't know how to use it. I'm not sure which side is to blame in this kind of scenario, but they're using that system. And you said the stats said that Benny Ann gained 3.6 strokes putting. Yeah, you said that's when you know the shots are fake. 100%. I mean, the Michael Kim gaining 5 strokes off the tee, like, I guess maybe he turned into the Hulk for that given round. But it's wild, some of the stuff that we saw in there. Let's go through the props, which I actually think for today are going to be pretty attackable for these boards. And I've already entered 2 slips myself. I will go through those here in a second. But these averages from round number 1 are not really going to be accurate for round 2. You're talking about going from a typhoon to perfect conditions. So this is speculative. So it could go wrong on us here. But this is, you know, I've been doing this long enough to where I get this right a lot more often than I'm wrong when it comes to these kind of speculative guesses. I think it's going to play at least to a minus 0.75 scoring average, probably at -1 kind of scoring average. that means that the birdie average and the bogey averages are going to move quite a bit. I mean, that's a 1.5 to a 2-stroke difference right there. If it's going to go to a minus 0.75 to a -1 scoring average. So I think the birdie average is going to be at least 4 per round. That's a drastic change. You can see from this 3.37 mark. And then this bogey or worse average from 3.81 per round. I think that's going to drop to like 2.5, maybe like 2.6, 2.7 per round, but rather drastic differences in either case. So that's where I'm getting that kind of calculus with getting to that minus 0.75 to -1 scoring average, but we're not going to know for sure ahead of time. I mean, this is going to be the first time we've ever seen this golf course with perfect conditions. We know what it looks like when things get nasty, but here's what I'll say. And I'm actually probably even being conservative with that scoring average I was giving up, minus 0.75 to -1. And here's the reason why I can say that. A +1 scoring average at a course with 40-mile-an-hour winds is not that bad. Like normally when we get weather that shitty, it's +2, +2.5, +3. If it's a major championship type course, it's like a +4, +5 scoring average, right? It played +1 in probably the worst weather that these guys have played on in the last 5, maybe 6, maybe even the entire 2025 year. It was the worst conditions that they've played in, and it only played to this +1 scoring average. I would argue, based on that fact, and I'm not going to make my scoring average or projections based on this, but if we were using that kind of logic, -2 scoring average at this kind of golf course. I mean, this is one of the easier golf courses on tour if it only played +1 in those kind of conditions. So I'm going to keep it more conservative. I'm not going to get too overboard on our exposure. But even if we use that minus 0.75 to -1 working scoring average, a birdie average of 4 to maybe 4.25 to 4.3 per round, bogey average of 2.5 to 2.75 per round, even if we use those kind of working averages, there's a lot of value on these underdog boards. And Prize Picks seems to be a little bit scared about these averages, doesn't know what to do at the golf course. So they're punting the slate. They only posted birdie or better matchups, which I guess we'll go through together here in just a minute. But Underdog did post an entire board, and they are also scared of my exposure because of all the 4 props that I've already entered so far. Every single one of them now has a multiplier on it. But when we took them, there were no multipliers on the Patreon page. So that is an example of why being a part of the Patreon page is so valuable. But if we go through a couple of the props I've already entered, I can show you the thought process of what we're using for round 2. And we'll probably try and find something to add on top of it here as well. So you can see 2 of the props that I took were these overs on birdies are better. And just to show you why both of those are value. So let's start with Siwoo Kim. He's a top 40 birdie maker on tour. He's minus 145 towards his over. If we go to Norn next, Norn doesn't qualify for the year-long stats. That's because he got hurt and only started playing towards the end of the year. But over his last 12 rounds, he's gaining 2.99 shots gained per round, which is number 1 of anyone in the field. So the best form of every single player that's playing. He's minus 150 towards the over. So that's why at even money, these didn't have a multipliers on them when I was playing them priorly. They were mega values. And the issue is with Underdog is that they're becoming really skimpy on their payouts. It's really just terrible to see. It really makes you not want to play on the site that much longer because of the kind of payouts that they're offering. Not only do they bump anything that gets any sort of action behind it, but even the payouts when these didn't have multipliers on them, it was only 2.58x. So it is a pretty big difference, obviously, from the 2.58x number down to this 1.99x that they have it at now. But even the 2.58x number wasn't something that I was thrilled about. Like there's severe line value on both spots. That's why I still went out there and mixed it in. But yeah, Underdog not really becoming the place that we want to play. And unfortunately for us, Prize Picks is scared to even post a board. So we'll go through some other props that might make sense for tomorrow's action. But yeah, everything I've entered already has already moved. Another one was the Xander Schauffele under on bogeys worse. I think the average is going to be like 2.5 to maybe 2.75 per round. Xander's an elite tier bogey avoider. If we take a look at his line on the books, just to show you this one, I believe he's minus 160 towards the under. Let's see. So yeah, he's minus 160 towards the under, as you can see. And then I paired that up with a Wyndham Clark over on birdies, who I did fade for the round number 1 action, but he was putting decently well. He actually wasn't playing as poorly as I think the scorecard would indicate. A lot of the par 5s, he hit drives that were offline. Even if he hit a 3-wood or an iron off the tee, he could have reached those in 2. So I think it was rather unlucky that he didn't birdie either of those 2 holes. So I'll take him for this. And just like those other 2 props that we mixed in, he's severe value towards the over as well. In fact, he was minus 150. Let's see. Yeah, he's still at that minus 150 mark in that over direction. Just really stupid that Underdog is terrified of any tout that has a winning record against them and just instantly bump stuff. So we're going to take those out. We're going to try and find some sort of a replacement for it. On the prize pick side, I want to refresh this just to see if maybe in case they decided to post anything else, but doubtful. I'm assuming that they just don't like the kind of variance or unknown that we have with those scoring conditions. But for as much as I want to give, crap to Underdog for bumping stuff and not giving the best payouts, at least they're giving us a board for round number 2. That's something that prize picks can't necessarily say. We're looking at a Hideki for an under at 68.5 at plus 100. So he's even money on Underdog, it looks like, at that kind of a number. I am curious where Draftkings has him. So let's just go ahead and double check that before I give you all my feedback. Let's see. So Hideki is minus 135 towards his over. So yeah, he should probably be plus 100 towards his under. But if it's going to be about a -1 to, I would say about a -1 scoring average is probably as far as I would push it. Shooting -3 to go under that kind of a number at plus 100 feels appropriate because that's gaining 2 strokes to the field. And this isn't like it's a super weak field event. Like we've got some scrub Japan Tour players towards the bottom that are outliers that are going to impact the scoring average for sure. But I don't know if it's as much of an impact or a big enough impact to where we'd be projecting him for 2 shots gained per round, because on the PGA Tour, Hideki's been averaging about a shots gained per round, which is below his career baseline, not having the best 2025. So I'm okay with it because of the plus 100 odds. Obviously, that's a little bit more favorable than the usual minus 110, maybe minus 115 juice that you're eating on that specific book. But I don't love the play, if that makes sense. I think I'd rather go to his birdie line at even money if I could. You said your books have everyone at 69.5, and you said there's a few that are minus 140, but most of them are minus 120. You said you're probably going to play the whole board for under. I would probably do that and spread it out like you're saying. You're saying you're going to go a fourth of a unit on the 16 players. I might even go a half a unit on those, man. I mean, if you're getting that kind of value compared to DraftKings and FanDuel, I actually think there's value compared to some of the DraftKings and FanDuel lines for taking positive stance plays. If you're getting even better spots at lower juice, then I think that's an absolute no-brainer. So I like that strategy, Ernie. I wish I could play straights on the books here in Florida. Unfortunately, Hard Rock Bet has not started to post like round strokes or anything like that. But when we do get that added to the market down here, that's a strategy that I'll be employing very often. But, the equivalent to that on the pick'em side, if you're on a site like Underdog and Prize Picks and watching this, is to mix and match and do a whole bunch of different slips. The terrible part is if we had a prize picks board, it would be a lot more viable. But on Underdog with the 2.58x payout for like overs on birdies, it's just not worth doing that sort of thing. So good call on that, Ernie. And especially at those sort of odds and lines, I really like that. You said you're looking at Kitayama for the under 68.5 at plus 110. Yeah, so the plus 110 numbers, I would say a little bit more intriguing on that. And Kitayama, he's somebody that was a good course fit for me. He's top 5 in that category. He's also a really good birdie maker. So in the DFS format, I really like Kitayama, even despite the ownership for his round 2 setup. So yeah, plus 110, it's surely tempting. It's a little bit more tempting than that plus 100 was. I'll say that. But let's see what we can do in finding some of these lines. And I just want to skim through these birdie better matchups real quickly. They're all the 0.5. So my hunch is typically to look at unders when we have the 0.5s, because we can find a couple players with similar birdie or better percentages, or maybe even a player that's the opponent that's the better birdie maker, then we can find some value on these. But it doesn't look like there's really any examples of that after skimming through the list there. But let's see if we can find some more traditional value. So I was looking at some birdie or better overs. That's obviously what 3 of the 4 props that I took to this point already were. But if we were going to try and play something, there were some minus 130s, some minus 135s that we could mix in, or at least that I could throw out there for you guys. Not quite the minus 145 or minus 150s that I was mixing in, but still, getting closer to that plus EV line. I personally wouldn't enter them because of the crappy 2.58x multiplier that you're getting on Underdog. But if you haven't entered anything to this stage and you're just looking to get a sweat in for round 2, here's a few examples. A pot kiter, he's minus 135 towards the over. So let's actually just do it this way. Just search it by the players. So pot kiter, he's at even money at that 4.5. Let's see who else. Grazerman, he had a really good round number 1. He really kept it together, didn't post many bogeys. So he's at 4.5 and he's also even money. Højgaard, he's got the multiplier. Siwoo, we showed you that one already that we played. He's got the multiplier on it. There's Noren. There's Wyndham Clark. Michael Kim, he's minus 130 towards the over. He's playing well. He just won on the DP World Tour. So if you're looking for somebody that's playing well, kind of like we had with an Alex Noren, Michael Kim would fit that perspective and would fill that kind of a role. Let's see what else. Higo. Isn't Higo still on this list? Higo might be one of the few guys at minus 145 that's still available, and he is. So of all of these players that we have on here, Higo is the best one that we have because he's that minus 145 that'll probably get a multiplier at some point. So yeah, let's go with Higo and then find something to pair him up with. We could go the course history guy or the form guy and a Michael Kim. We could go the round one form guy in a Grazerman, who I'm actually going to take out of there. The round one form in a really windy conditions doesn't mean that much to me. So it's Potgieter or Kim. And I feel like Michael Kim's the better play just because Michael Kim played a lot better than Potgieter did round one. And it's no cut. So they're going to play all 4 rounds. So the, bitch quit and give up after a bad round one isn't as much of a factor this week. But Potgieter shot +6 and looked absolutely lost. Kim, on the other hand, put up a respectable round, is coming in off a win as well. And I know he's not an elite tier birdie maker, but he was at least minus 130 towards that over. So this Higo one's probably my favorite, though. Let's see what we have for bogeys or worse. So I'm okay with that Michael Kim prop, by the way, but I do want to line shop what we have for bogeys or worse. I obviously took that under on Xander Schauffele because he was like minus 160. But what is Hideki for his under? Hideki's a really good bogey avoider. Obviously going to be locked in because it's his home event. Minus 150 towards the under. So you know what? This is the best value that we have on the board right now. It'd be these two. It'd be the Higo for the over. It'd be the Hideki for the under on bogeys or worse. And in fact, I'm going to go ahead and enter that for 2.58x. And the max I can enter it on this account is $25. So I'm going to go ahead and put in as much as I possibly can. Kind of crazy that that's what they do to me. And in fact, I believe I'm maxed out for the day now because I have 3 slips in on this account and my max is $75 per day. Just crazy what they do. If you're even a slightly winning better, they go ahead and limit you. But if you're a winner like I am against the books, they just completely slash your account into oblivion, essentially. But yeah. But yeah, these two props feel pretty solid about. The minus 145 on Higo. He doesn't qualify for the year-long stats, or at least he didn't before. Let's double check now. Earlier this year, he didn't play enough rounds to qualify, but yeah, not showing up for the year-long stats. But if you take a look at the last 24 rounds, he's a top 5 birdie maker in this field, so I like that. And then the Hideki Matsuyama under on bogeys or worse. I know this year he's not as elite in the category because he hasn't been playing as well this year. We mentioned that earlier. But even then, where does Hideki rate out in this category? Even with a crappy year, he's still better than average when it comes to bogey avoidance. So, at his home event where he's a little bit more locked in, he started to play better golf over the last month or so, like that on Hideki, especially with that minus 150 odds on it. So let's see, look at that. when I looked at it, you could see the multipliers were already on it. This is how much they're already over my account. Literally, as soon as I enter something and post something or, do something here on the live stream, they immediately end up moving it. So it's just like, I don't know. I guess I should, realize that they're giving me respect when they're doing that sort of thing. But it is mighty fun and annoying at the same time. So yeah, if you didn't catch that from just a few seconds ago, now it's down there at 1.97x. But what can we do at this point, right? Let's look at the Euro Golf stuff. So I do have the averages for the Euro Golf side, and we do have some props for those posted rather quickly. Scoring average is plus 0.58, which is 71.58. Birdie or better percentage is 3.45. So it was about what it was last year for the scoring averages on the DP World Tour. I thought based on the weather forecast that the scoring would improve, and that obviously did not happen. I luckily didn't play anything for the DP World Tour. I just stayed away. I wanted to kind of see the averages before I went out there and played. And my hunch and my intuition there ended up saving me at least 1 unit on the slip that I would have entered, because I would have been on unders on strokes, overs on birdies, the kind of stuff that I was mentioning last night. But the round 2 forecast, at least from what I was looking at before, let's go back to Club de Campo, Spain. Let's put it back on the 1 hour forecast that we have here. It looks ideal in the afternoon. So like if we were to go to some of these PM players for, unders on strokes, maybe overs on birdies, something at like 4 birdies or maybe like a 70 stroke line, I really like that for this kind of a slate. So let's see what they have for these guys in the PM. So 69 strokes for a lot of your elite tier players. I was hoping that maybe we'd get these guys at 69.5 or God forbid 70 strokes. I'd be hammering their unders. It's a par 71 setup, so it played 0.5 over par. These are probably stayaways for me. It's almost the same exact board that we had for round one. A Thurston Lawrence, I'm a slut for Thurston. I love playing him as much as possible in all these different formats, but let's see, what is he? His PMT time, so he at least has that going for him. Let's look at the birdie or better board. So very similar to the first day, a lot of fours, some 4.5s on some of the better players that we have in the field. Let me see what the odds look like on that side of things, because these boards just dropped. The round ended much after the Japan Tour stuff, because obviously it's in Europe, different timing than what they have on that side. So let's look at Lawrence first. So I guess Lawrence doesn't have a line posted, but it's 69.5. Let's find somebody who's like comparable. I guess an Olsen would be a comparable level player, and he's minus 130 towards the under. But these odds look awfully similar to what they had for the first round. So yeah, like Erasmus Niergaard Peterson, he's minus 160 under, but he's down at 69 strokes. I don't see any drastic value on this board. Like maybe a Dan Bradbury. He's been playing some decent golf. Same thing with an Hugo Cousseau. They're at minus 0.5, so they have to shoot -1 to cover that. So that's gaining 1.5 strokes to the field. That's tough for me to want to take, actually. Like these guys, they're above average DP World Tour players, gaining like a half a stroke per round, but gaining a stroke and a half per round just to cover that kind of a line, I don't know, feels a little bit sketchy, especially because they weren't on the PM side of things. Now I want to look at Ayora. Ayora has been fantastic on the DP World Tour. In fact, he's been one of the best players that they have on that side of things. And I want to see if they have a line for him. So they do, and he's at minus 130 towards the under. He's on the PM side when it's going to be less windy, like we saw in that forecast, also a little bit warmer. I think he's from Spain too. Don't quote me on that. I'm like 99% sure on it that he's from Spain. He's got that hometown narrative, that support going. I like that Ayora play. You know what? In fact, I'm going to go ahead and mix that in as at least one prop that I would slightly recommend playing. And then let's look at the birdie or better list. So I'm going to look at Rasmus Niergaard Peterson, actually. He makes a shit ton of birdies. So he's about even money at 4.5. Let's look at Penge. Oh, Penge makes a metric fuck ton of birdies. And he's minus 135 towards the over. Yeah, I think that's going to be it. So let's look at Raiden, I guess. Raiden also makes a lot of birdies. Got to put some respect on his name. But I do think that Penge makes more. So yeah, Penge at minus 135 over as opposed to Rain. That's that minus 135 under. We're going to enter this on the DP World Tour side as well. Two studs that have been playing really good golf heading into this event. I don't have the actual averages up in front of me, but I know Ayora is close to a stroke and a half gain per round over his last 24 rounds. And Marco Penge, the same thing. Top 5, top 10 player in this field when it comes to the form. So it's obviously a harder golf course, or at least looks harder when you're looking at the field averages. But unlike the PGA Tour, where the average field strength is a little bit higher because it's invitational, right? You got some of those Japan Tour players, but the actual PGA Tour players are pretty good in this field. The DP World Tour guys in this field suck. And I hate to talk crap about these guys, but I say suck as compared to your regular DP World Tour field. You've got all these random scrub Spanish players in here. It's like when we have the US Open, right? We got all the random qualifier US players that suck as well, right? That are playing in our home open. Happens when we go to Canada, happens when we go to the Mexico Open. You get these guys that aren't even professional golfers that are in that field. So though it played 0.58 over par, we have to consider that for the round one and the round two average. So for round two, it's going to be the same way. The field average is going to look worse than it actually is. In reality, the scoring average for DP World Tour players is probably even to even under par. And your birdie average is also probably significantly higher than what we're seeing over here too. So that is something that I'm incorporating in this analysis. On top of that, I do want to show you guys, let's bring up the DP World Tour stats. So just one moment. I'm going to show you guys just how good guys like Penge are at making birdies, etc. So let me reshare my screen and I can show you what we're working with here. Of course, they always leak my email when I click on this, so you get to see my old email that I don't use anymore whenever they do that. Let's go to birdies, and let's take a look at the list for this year. Marco Penge, number 5 in birdies or better per round at 4.33 per round. And the average for birdies or better per round on the DP World Tour, which is about this like 90 mark, is 3.52 per round. We go back to the average. That's pretty close, right, to the average that we have here. But this is the average before the cut line of like 3 points. Let's go back to it, 3.45 per round. If we get the actual field average, it's probably like 3.75 to 3.8 per round, which means that Penge, who's at that 4.33 per round number, is at a 4.6 to 4.7 projection. That is, not to give away too much of my process, kind of what I do to project these players out, right? It's using birdies are better gained, bogeys are worse gained, shots gained to their field, like all these sort of things to go out there and project players. Marco Penge is at about, using some mental math, I haven't actually ran the projection on my end quite yet, is in that 4.6 to 4.75 range. And that's why he's at that minus 135 juice towards the over, hence why we mixed him in for that kind of a slip. So that's the DP World Tour slip that we're going to go with. We went through one over there on the underdog side as well. Any other exposure that I'm entering for this round too, you guys can find on my Patreon page. On top of that, the spreadsheet that I was showing you guys before with all the projections for round number 2 can also be found over there with every single player that I'm using in my player pool. Also all the projected ownership to help you out with those game theory decisions, all by joining the Golf DFS tier. So Golf DFS tier is how you get access to that. Golf Prop tier is how you get access to all of the underdog and the prize pick stuff. But it's all I've got, guys. I appreciate your support here on the channel as usual. Best of luck with anything that you guys are entering. And see if there's any last second questions before we hop on out of here. He said, did we talk about Grazerman? He said his strokes are only at 69.5. Yeah, if he's even money at 69.5, I would take that under, especially with like a -1 to -1.5 scoring average. So I'd be okay with that one. He said you're looking for a bounce back for guys like Minwoo and Goddard. I could see it. Unfortunately, the shots gain metrics aren't going to be accurate enough for us to use those, but I would say that they've got a chance for a bounce back. Where else? He said you like Higo. Me too, especially with that kind of juice towards the over. Yeah, they're quick about it, that's for sure. He said, since it's Thursday night football, do I just combine props for golf and football? I do that on my exposure, but I don't do that for the stuff that I put out on like my Patreon page because I have everything separated by sport, just the way that I set up my content on my Patreon. So I keep everything separate. But yeah, when I'm entering my own exposure and deploying units and whatnot, sometimes it does look a little bit different than what I put on my content. But that's because I don't have to keep it stringent to the content that I'm posting, right? Like every once in a while, I'll post a combo slip of like golf and football, but that's pretty rare. But yeah, that's a good strategy, particularly when you're getting rid of the multipliers, because like you can take the -150 on a Norn and mix that in with an NFL prop and get a full 3x payout. That is, especially if you can find a plus EV prop on the NFL side, it's a really good way to get that exposure without having to pay the tax on the correlation. But the correlation, it is worth pointing out, really matters and is really useful. And you should be paying a tax when you're taking correlation on a slip, right? There's a huge added benefit to that, especially on a sport like golf that is so heavily driven by the conditions. That's the part that you're giving away if you're doing that kind of a thing. He said, Underdog has a person right now watching me live. Yeah, I don't know if it's that or if they have just like some massive red flag on my account to where if I post something, they automatically bump it. But something like that for sure. But that's all I've got, guys. I appreciate you just tuning into the live stream as per usual. Go ahead, smash that like button if you guys haven't already. Also subscribe to the channel so you guys don't miss any of the content to come. I do have a Thursday night football preview already up on my channel. So if you guys want to check that out, you can. There's some props over there that, like Antonio said, you might even be able to pair up with some of the PGA stuff that's on the board and get a better payout on. So check out that preview if you guys haven't already. Again, it's on my YouTube channel for Thursday Night Football between the Eagles and the Giants. I think the Eagles are going to kick some ass. That's where I'm going with a lot of my prop and a lot of my DFS exposure. But don't sleep on the underdog. It's already happened a couple times this year, especially over the last week and a half, where we've had some quote-unquote surprise upsets. It's just the NFL. It's not college football. We don't get 40 to 50-point spreads like we get in that scrub league. Is the reason why I don't watch college football. It's nonsense. It's not even close for pretty much 99% of the games. NFL is the exact opposite of that. So if you're playing in the GPPs, don't sleep on those Giants. But that's all I've got, and I'll see you guys for the round 3 live stream tomorrow.